This is Robert Clinkybeard and David Anderson with the Commercial Landscapers Podcast. We're going to take 20 minutes of your life to deliver some amazing business content from accomplished leaders to bring you value, scale your business, and better yourself personally. We hope you really enjoy the show, and I encourage you to share with your network so they can subscribe and we can expand these messages globally. We are also super excited to be supported by two brilliant sponsors. If you're tired of measuring properties, Site Recon platform fully automates measurements so you can focus on sales. So think measurements, think Site Recon. The other sponsor is Company Cam, who make it dead simple to communicate, document, and problem solve with guys in the field, no matter where you are. Company Cam brings documentation, communication, and liability protection together in one simple, easy to use app for you and your entire team. Company Cam is the only app every landscaper needs. Check it out. Hi, this is Robert Clinkybeard and David Anderson with the Commercial Landscapers Podcast. I'm super excited today to be joined by Jim Dew. Jim is the CEO of Dew Wealth Management and the creator of Functional Wealth Management, an innovative and strategic approach designed to expand wealth, freedom, and time. He has 23 years of experience building high-functioning wealth management teams for entrepreneurs, and Jim earned his Bachelor in Science in Mathematics from the University of Arizona and an MBA from the Arizona State University. So, Jim, welcome to the show today.
Thanks, Robert. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. It's been a while, but always good to see you. So tell me a little bit more about yourself. I just touched on it, but you could probably tell me a whole long list of accomplishments that you've achieved over the years.
Yeah, so my first job out of college, I was a high school, public school math teacher and physics teacher and coached basketball and little football at a small school in the Phoenix area because I wanted to make a difference, kind of try to change the world. And then after 5 years of doing that, I felt like public education was in some ways a broken system, and I struggled in that broken system. So I looked for another way to help people. So I found financial services, and this was 26 years ago. And 4 years into that, I found out that system has issues too. So started my own company at the urging of my wife, Mimi, 22 years ago, decided we were entrepreneurs, so we should serve entrepreneurs and business owners. And then along the way, we learned about the structure that billionaires use to manage their wealth, which is called a family office. And if you're listening and you haven't heard of that before, it's where a billionaire will hire all the needed tax, legal, insurance, and investment professionals, all the attorneys and accountants, as full-time employees working for that one billionaire and his or her family. When I saw that, I realized that's the best structure for entrepreneurs. There's just one problem. They're very expensive to build. You need about $300 or $400 million in assets before you can afford to build your own. But they're worth it. That's why Bill Gates has one. That's why Oprah Winfrey has one. So I had this crazy idea. Mimi and I thought, hey, what if we could create called a virtual family office at a fraction of the cost to serve entrepreneurs like us who are making a lot of money and have successful businesses, but don't have anywhere near that kind of capital to build it. So that's what we set out to do. And that's what we've been doing for many years. And we're really enjoying it and love serving our entrepreneur clients the way we do.
No, that's great. That's great. We obviously sat down one day, you explained it all to me, and it seemed like a really great system. So, for somebody who hasn't even thought about, trying to go down that realm, I mean, they're beginning to make a good bit of money in their business. They're maybe thinking about retiring or having an exit plan in 10, 15 years off, but it's just somewhat foreign to them, just getting into that whole wealth management. What would be perhaps the initial steps that we'd have to start thinking about that?
The first thing that I think we all need to know in any part in our life is where are we? Where are we now and what do we need to do next? And so one thing I would say with all the entrepreneurs I've met over the last 26 years, they usually fall into one or more of these characters. So the first is the ostrich. And if you're the ostrich, you would say things like, I don't have time to deal with all the wealth planning stuff. I'm just building my business, making money, taking care of my family, living my life. And it's easy to be the ostrich, but the results are almost always poor. The next is the juggler. That's the entrepreneur that's trying to manage all of these things in the areas of tax, legal, insurance, and investment on his or her own. And if you're the juggler, it's hard. And you know that there's probably balls that are dropping and things that are not being paid attention to. And the results are almost always poor there too. The next level is really what we call the air traffic controller. And this is the entrepreneur, business owner who really has excellent professionals in the areas of tax, legal, insurance, and investment, And you can get excellent results being the air traffic controller. But if you're the air traffic controller, you're managing those professionals in that team. And it takes a lot of time and energy and work to make sure that those professionals have your back and are being held accountable and are delivering on their promises to you. So you might be in one or more of those areas, but if you're a juggler or an ostrich, the next step is to move to the air traffic controller. And ultimately, you want to move to that virtual family office structure where you have someone else who's running that team, a firm that's used to running the attorneys and accountants and all those folks for you. Doesn't mean you need to fire anyone on your team. It just means someone other than you should be managing that team, because you're probably not speaking the languages of tax, legal, insurance, and investment. You're probably not an expert in those areas, and you probably haven't built a team like that before.
No, and I was chuckling to myself because I have been through all those stages you talked about, the ostrich and the juggler, and you know, I can totally relate to that, going through my different stages in business. But then, you know, when I start thinking about, you know, I got somewhat familiar with, you know, all these functions, and I saw maybe had an insurance agent, and maybe had a lawyer, maybe had somebody doing some financial planning for me, and even my banker, but they were all working in silos. So, you know, you just talked about, well, you don't necessarily have to fire anybody in your team, but, you know, somehow you have to bring them all together, because you need, just like my coaching business, you need a strategy, you need a roadmap. So talk to me a little bit about how that works.
It's a great point that you brought up, Robert, because really what I see often with entrepreneurs is they practice random acts of wealth planning. So they hear an idea from a friend or another entrepreneur and they run out and do that. Oh, you know, you need a family trust. So they get that done. Hey, you should invest some money in Bitcoin. So they throw some money at Bitcoin. Hey, you know, what are you doing for your tax planning? Here's an idea. And they get this kind of financial junk drawer of all this stuff. And just like you said so well, really you need an overall plan. And the plan is really based on, what are you trying to achieve? What are your values, your goals, and your important relationships? And once you know what you want to achieve, you're going to get there through a plan. And a plan is made up of tactics and strategies put together in all those different disciplines in a coordinated fashion with a coordinated team to get you the outcome that you want in the future.
And how important, and how do you tease out, you know, what does life look like, you know, when they're 60 or 70? Because a lot of people, again, I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I try building that roadmap and where they're going. And some of them is really easy. They could do it in an hour. And other ones, it might take them 6 months, just because, I don't know, they're either so involved in the business, they just can't think that far enough ahead. But how do you help to shape out where they're going?
That's another good question. And really, the first thing is, and I tell all entrepreneurs this, is we become entrepreneurs because you want to make a difference, because you want to serve your family, and also because you want to make money. You get rich in America by being concentrated in a business. Something like 95% of people I'd call seriously wealthy, which is, in my definition, anyone who has more than $20 million of liquid net worth. So to become seriously wealthy, 95% of the time, you have to own a small business. So you have to be concentrated in that small business, but to stay wealthy, you need to be diversified outside of that small business. So you really need to get clear on, why do you want to become seriously wealthy? What, you know, the why is so important. Why do you want to become seriously wealthy? Is it because you want a certain lifestyle? Is it because you want to create what's called a dynasty? So you have a legacy, which is one generation. A dynasty is 5 generations or more of wealth. Do you want to create a dynasty for 5 generations of wealth? Do you want to do something for charity in a meaningful way to put your own little dent in the universe in a positive way? Are there people in your family you want to care for and serve? Is it, you know, things that you want a certain amount of passive income so that you can travel and take time off and have life experiences? Get really clear on the why, because the why is going to pull you forward. Once you know the why, then getting there is developing the plan. And every entrepreneur is going to exit their business. And if you're on this call, you're no different. You'll either exit because, if you're fortunate, you'll sell to a strategic or financial buyer. You may sell it to your employees. You may give it to your kids. You may fail because of competition. You may die or get disabled. Your company may just run it till it runs out of cash, but you will exit your business. And the sooner you start thinking about that exit, the more you can match that up with what you're trying to achieve, and also the better planning you can do in advance. And I've seen entrepreneurs I can think of a couple that we worked with. One came to me right after she sold her company, and she was really excited. And she said, "I'm ready to hire you now, Jim." And she had sold for $9 million, and she paid $3 million of taxes. No pre-planning, no good team, and so that was kind of her outcome. We had another entrepreneur who we created a team that worked very well. We had about 4 or 5 years in advance of that exit. It was a $40 million exit. The entrepreneur also paid $3 million of taxes. So how come one entrepreneur paid $3 million and only got $9 million total sale price, and the other was a $40 million sale and they paid $3 million in taxes? And that was because we had years with a great team of experts to put together strategies to avoid a lot of the taxes. Now remember, avoiding taxes are completely legal and encouraged. Evading taxes completely illegal and will put you in the color orange, which you may not be so flattering on you. So that's the thing, is start planning your exit now. And we've seen it's always better with planning. And we've advised on exits as small as 2 million to the largest we ever advised on for business partner clients of ours. Just sold to Blackstone. It was a $1.6 billion all cash deal in February. So we've seen a lot. And the biggest thing is, first of all, just the awareness that you will exit your business, and then getting clear on what you're trying to achieve and start putting together the plan with your team of professionals so you have the best outcome that's possible.
No, you made some great points here, and I've heard some similar stories. I do have some questions about what you just said, but before I go there, when you talk about where you're going in life and what's your purpose, I mean, you must have some clients that also throw in things like, well, I'm really passionate about sustainability or the green movement or something. So how does that play into, again, building out that roadmap or that plan for them? Is that something you take into account and steer them in the right direction?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of ways that someone who has that type of philosophy about sustainability and things of the kind. So it might be that they want to invest their money outside of their company and do things that are supporting sustainability. And that can be everything from investing in publicly traded companies that are kind of the better at doing good things for the earth. That could also mean things like micro lending to countries like Africa to try to create sustainability in their economic system by making these little micro loans to, call it small businesses, very small businesses in these areas that actually can change the community and change that country over time. Whatever that might be, that could be on the charitable front. And you could do that through things like a donor advised fund. You could do that through a private foundation. You could do that through a 501c3 if you actually want to provide services. So there's that whole aspect of it. And a lot of those have benefits to you from a tax perspective on helping charities. Other things might be how you want to live your life. Maybe you want to shrink your carbon footprint. I heard Bill Gates talking about how, he has this huge carbon footprint because he's flying jets around, in his private jet around the country and all these kinds of things. And he's consciously doing all these things to zero his carbon footprint. So you can also change how you live your life and what you're doing to make the world more sustainable, if that's your goal and what matters to you. And I think, stuff like that should matter probably to all of us to some degree, but people have varying degrees about how much they want to help, where, and what they want to do. And it could be also things like educating your kids and grandkids on those things that matter to you. One thing that we talk about with estate planning and transfer planning that gets missed a lot is, the most valuable thing, when I just put it to entrepreneurs like this, I say, okay, other than your money and stuff, what do you want to pass on to your kids and grandkids? And they come up with all these amazing things and all this wisdom that they've learned. And then I say to them, well, if you could only pass on one thing to your kids and grandkids, either what you just told me or your money and stuff, which would you pass along? And almost to a person, they say, I'd rather pass along the wisdom, because if they have the wisdom, they can live a good life. They can start a business. They can start over if they fail. But if they have money and stuff and they don't have the wisdom, they'll squander it. So I would encourage all of you on this call to start documenting your wisdom through stories and videos, which are the most powerful ways to pass things on, that you can put in a digital lockbox that can be there forever. So I just lost my dad in February this year, and he was 95. He lived a great life. But since then, I think of things I wish I could ask him, or I look at whatever videos or pictures we have, and there are no more. I can't ask him another question. And you can, though, you can tell stories on video about your wisdom, and you can put it in a digital lockbox for future generations. Or if you don't have kids like Mimi and I, just for the generations or for other entrepreneurs or for anyone that might find value in that.
No, I love that. I love that. Yeah, I'm obviously sorry to hear about your dad, but I love that
Thanks,
idea
bro.
about videos. Because you're right. I mean, a lot of, especially your parents' videos weren't around, so a lot of them are in photographs. So to have videos now, I think is a great idea. I love it. So going back to, you reminded me of just some conversations I've had with my clients over even the last 2 or 3 weeks, where I get some clients talking about, well, I'm thinking about an ESOP with my employees, or I've got all this money that was finally approved from the PPP loan. What do I do with that money? So I assume all those types of conversations, rather than just bouncing them around other entrepreneurs who maybe don't have that experience, I'm assuming this is something that you and your team would be able to pull on your resources and give them a fully educated and balanced view on how that should be handled.
Exactly right. Whether it's PPP loans or ESOPs, those types of things we've dealt with a lot. And it's really figuring out, again, what you're trying to accomplish, but then having a firm that understands everything about you and understands what the attorney is doing in the corporate perspective, what the attorney is doing in the estate transfer perspective, what the CPA is doing, if you have a tax attorney, what your banker is doing, what your insurance agent's doing, and make sure that all those things are being coordinated, but also making sure that a firm understands you so well that without even knowing all the planning techniques and things that you can do, they can bring ideas to you and they can vet them throughout the team to make sure they get implemented in the very best way possible.
No, I agree
The other thing
100%.
that I'd say too is really what you're looking for to build and run one of these teams is something we call a linchpin partner. And a linchpin partner is really typically a firm in wealth planning that has 3 distinct qualities. So first, a specialization in working with entrepreneurs, because most people in wealth planning will work with anybody who has money, but entrepreneurs have a very distinct set of opportunities and challenges, different from all other types of businesses and people. And then second, a experience, because you don't want to have people figuring out how to build and run these virtual family offices for the first time on your dime. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, a fiduciary standard of care, which means you have a firm that represents you and puts your interests ahead of their own. But this is where that term gets tricky. Most financial advisors in America are dual registered. What that means is sometimes they're wearing a hat representing you as a fiduciary, and then sometimes they change that hat to represent a broker dealer, brokerage firm, bank, or insurance company. And they're not often super clear on when they're changing hats. The other problem with fiduciary is if you're a fiduciary like we are, you can disclose away a bunch of conflicts of interest through a big document most people never read. So, I mean, one thing we've done to stick our flag in the ground is we don't sell products, although we represent the entrepreneurs if they need any products to make sure that they're not paying too much in commissions or getting in a bad product. But we don't sell products. We don't take referral fees. We don't take kickbacks or revenue sharing. We only get paid directly from the entrepreneur. And we also don't have investment requirements. A lot of firms, you have to invest $1 million or $5 million with them under their program to get any advice. And we feel that then skews the advice toward them trying to gather assets than serving you and getting you the best outcome when it comes to what you're trying to achieve for you and your family.
No, that's great. That's great advice, because yeah, unfortunately the financial, I suppose, sector does have a little bit of a bad reputation when you start reading some books and hearing about some of the fees involved. Now, what typically some of the challenges you face in persuading, the ostrich or the juggler entrepreneur, where they're really busy, and the thought of them trying to effectively open up them and all their financials and all their personal stuff, which is could be overwhelming, could be that trust factor, could be a challenge. What do you see as maybe being that trigger or that point in which you think, no, I need this?
Well, I'd say everyone who is an entrepreneur already has some sort of family office structure. It just might not be a very good one, and you might be running it. So you already have that stuff going on, whether you're ignoring it or you're overwhelmed or you're just not really getting the results that you want. The question is, what is it costing you? And it's probably costing you things like you might be paying too much in taxes, you might be paying too much in insurance, you might be paying too many legal fees, you might be spending time and energy doing stuff that you're not good at or don't want to do that could actually help you. And every entrepreneur I've ever met, including myself, has made or will make $1 million mistake by not having this team properly constructed. I've never met an entrepreneur who's been around for a long time. When I talk to them about this, they go, yeah, I can remember my mistake that was $1 million or more. There's a great book by Keith Cunningham called The Road Less Stupid. And in there, Keith talks about how his big mistake was $100 million mistake. And he said the way he thinks about it is he got to go to a university that has $100 million tuition. So he got to go somewhere not many people get to attend, right? So we'll make mistakes, all of us, if we don't have that team, the people in the process. So I'd say sooner rather than later. And the other thing too is you don't have to do this all at once. What we do is we evaluate the current team, keep as many of the professionals as possible. If we can keep all of them, that's ideal. Keep them all, just get them to function and perform better. And then you can just pick one project at a time so that maybe 12 to 18 months from now, you'll be surprised at how much better everything is rather than thinking you have to do it all at once. And then also, if you hire the right firm, they're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So even if you think that you're not doing anything right now, you'll probably realize that there's stuff that's on your mind that's taking you away from your business and your family, even if you're not doing anything, because I don't know anyone that doesn't think about really long-term wealth building and wealth sustainability.
Right. Yep. Talking about team, if you come across and do an assessment of an entrepreneur's team around them, and you identify a couple people that should not be on it for whatever reason, what does that conversation look like?
The first thing we do is we talk to the entrepreneur and you say, okay, look, how important is this relationship to you? So for example, we had one entrepreneur and his insurance agent for his auto, his home, his liability protection was his brother-in-law. So obviously when we came to him and said, this is subpar work, this is not what we expect. And normally we would say, let's bring in a different insurance agent who's world-class and replace this person that's subpar. However, it's your brother-in-law. So what do you want to do? And he said, well, I'd really like to try to preserve the relationship because Thanksgiving dinner is going to be it's going to be a disaster if I fire my brother-in-law. So what we did is we went to the brother-in-law and we said, I'll tell you what, just to be transparent with you, we represent the client and we would normally fire you for this. And we showed them, here are all the things that we see that are wrong and missing in these policies. Normally we would fire you, but you have a brother-in-law that cares about you and wants to save your job. So here's the way we're going to do this. You're going to fix all these mistakes, and then we're going to check in with you on a regular basis. And we have to have confidence that you're going to be doing your job and doing it well, because we're not insurance agents. This is your job to do well. But in 6 months or a year, if we find more of these problems again, then guess what? Then we're going to go back and we're going to override your brother-in-law and tell him he has no choice. He has to fire you. And the brother-in-law actually responded really well. He was like, I really appreciate that. I'm going to be on top of it. And he stayed on since. He's not exactly as good as we would like as far as the quality, but he's getting the job done with us looking over his shoulder all the time. So there's those kinds of conversations if the relationship's important. If it's not important, then it depends on, is this an A player doing C work? So sometimes we find attorneys and accountants and we look at their credentials, their history, their specialization, and we look at their work product and go, you know what? They actually should be an A player. Why are they doing C work? And what we find is that often there are A players like attorneys and accountants that do C-level work because they're really busy and you're just one of many files on their desk. So one thing we bring to the table is after we have a few conversations with that attorney or accountant and they know that we're checking everything that they're doing, all of a sudden the responsiveness goes up, the quality goes up, because they know if we catch a mistake, there's going to be egg on their face and they don't want that. So that's the second choice. The third choice is we know that this is not an A player. It's never going to be an A player and there's not a relationship. And then we would just go out to our network of we have a network of a lot of great professionals all over the country that we would bring in depending on the situation and the state and everything else. And like I said earlier, we take no referral fees. So no one ever gets spiffed. We don't get spiffed when we refer to an attorney or an accountant or anybody else, but that's how we handle it. One of those three ways.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Good transparency there. So if somebody are listening to the show right now and they're thinking, I need to, I need to get a grip of my wealth, my financial state, what would be the first step for them? Would they start to pull out all their financial information, try and get it straight, or would that be a call to you just to see if you can have a conversation with them so you can explain your model? What would that look like?
The first thing I would say is knowing where you are, as I said early in this call, is important. And so we actually created a 9-question quiz that you can take. It takes probably less than 10 minutes for you to do it. If you go to makerichreal.com, you can take that 9-question quiz. And after you do that, if you want to talk to us, there's a few questions that qualify. Typically, we only work with entrepreneur business owners who are making take home $1 million or more, or will be there in 12 to 18 months if they're on a fast ramp. Remember, that's not gross revenue. That's what you take home through EBITDA and salary. Once you're making more than $1 million, you really should have a firm building a virtual family office for you, in my opinion. So you can go there to find out where you are, and that's how you get in touch with us. If you don't fit that, or you don't have another, you don't want to talk to us, or there's not another firm, I'd say the first thing is, evaluate your team, because your team is so important. And just pick one. Don't make it overwhelming. Pick one. Look at your accountant, look at your attorney, and then there's some specific things you can look for, your insurance agent. The first thing I start with is I go to the regulatory websites. Usually people Google the person, but to me, you get way more quality information from the regulatory website. So if it's an attorney, you go to the state bar. If it's an accountant, usually the State Board of Accountancy, insurance agent, the insurance department for your state. If it's a financial advisor, wealth manager, you go to finra.com, F-I-N-R-A, FINRA broker check. Just put FINRA broker check in your Google. And if they are a fiduciary, they won't be on that site, but when you put their name in, it will take you to the SEC advisor search to find them there. So that's an easy way. So start with the regulatory websites. Then I would look at credentials and experience. Then I would check on specialty. Then I'd look at personality and responsiveness. And then how proactive are they? Take CPAs, for example. Most CPAs, in my opinion, are tax historians. They tell you, they put everything in the right place on all these forms. They file your taxes, then they tell you what you're going to owe in estimated taxes going forward. But really, you want a tax planner, and that's a CPA who's proactively coming to you and saying, hey, based on the first 6 months of P&L, we just finished the first 6 months, this is a time when we look at all the P&Ls and say, okay, based on current tax law, based on the client's situation, based on the client's business, what are some things that they could be doing before year end to reduce their tax burden? So if your CPA never reaches out to you with any ideas, then you probably have a tax historian. So just start with one professional and evaluate that professional. And then you want to make sure you either have an A player, or if you have to be the air traffic controller right now, you just got to get on that accountant. You have to make sure you're the squeaky wheel so that accountant starts paying attention to you. Because sometimes they're capable, they're just too busy. Other times they're just not tax planners. And then they're just really like fancy H&R Block or something like that, doing business.
Right. Okay. And if people would if they want to find out more about you or get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that, Jim?
Our website has a lot of good information. It's dowealth.com. My last name, D-E-W, the word wealth, W-E-A-L-T-H.com. So our website, dowealth.com, or again, makerichreal.com if you want to take that quiz. And by the way, that quiz is broken up into the 3 main areas every entrepreneur needs to pay attention to on their wealth. That's protect, manage, and grow. And when you finish each section, then it's going to score you. And then I actually put together verbiage that would tell you kind of, here's where you are and here's some of the next things that you need to be thinking about. That's good too. And then, people can always connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook or something like that.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, Jim, really appreciate your time today. I think our audience are probably now, their heads are spinning. They're probably thinking, I need to probably take my head out of the sand or stop juggling and speak to a wealth manager. So thank you for your time, and I really appreciate it.
It's great to see you, Robert. I appreciate everything you're doing and the friendship too.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Jim. Take care. Hopefully that was pure dead brilliant for you today, and we've got some great takeaways for your business and your personal life. This is Robert Clinkenbeard along with David Anderson, and we'd love to get you and your friends to join us on our journey. 2 quick things before you go, listeners. Check out our website, thecommerciallandscaper.com. You can subscribe, you can share with your friends, but more importantly, check out our sponsors. We have Site Recon, who are going to help to capture measurements on your property and create a really streamlined process. And we have Company Cam, who make it dead simple to communicate, document, and problem solve with guys in the field, no matter where you are. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.